Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, the role of forensics in cybersecurity. We talk to an expert about the importance of investigations in identifying vulnerabilities and finding potential attackers. Also, it's Warrior Games time. We bring you highlights from the annual sports event for wounded, ill, and injured service members competing at Disney World. Plus, headlines from around the services. We've got video of a new DARPA submersible, and learn about how troops are training to recover fallen comrades. And coverage from the annual Techet Cyber conference. This year's theme, outpacing growing threats. We bring you the report. Also, a community comes together to honor a veteran who died with no known family and no one to attend his funeral. See what happened when word got out. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. One element of cybersecurity that many people might not think about is investigations. To prevent sensitive systems from being hacked or find the culprit when there is an attempted incursion, the government has an agency ready to respond. So what is their work like and how do they do it? Federal Times' Molly Weisner spoke to an expert from the Department of Homeland Security on this interesting wing of national security.
To kick us off, can you talk a little bit about what the center does and how it's sort of organized within the broader department, and then a little bit about the different initiatives that you and your team work on?
Certainly, my pleasure. So as you mentioned, I am the Deputy Assistant Director for Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, which is a subcomponent within DHS. We're housed under Immigration and Customs Enforcement. HSI is roughly 7,000 special agents strong. Strategically deployed around 235 domestic field offices and 93 foreign offices. We have the largest global footprint of any federal investigative law enforcement agency. We are, because of our robust transnational authority and criminal authority, as well as our immigration and customs authority, a pretty powerful presence on the federal scene, the second largest investigative agency in the federal government, and the investigative arm of DHS as a whole. My role at the Cybercrime Center, and it's recently been reconstituted as the DHS Cybercrime Center, where before it was the HSI Cybercrime Center. That change is indicative of the priority that Secretary Mayorkas has placed on cybercrime in general, child exploitation specifically. But what we do at the Cybercrime Center is really serve as that focal point for all HSI investigations that touch cyber, which at this point in time really encompasses every investigation that we are involved in.
Certainly a far-reaching authority, both literally and sort of figuratively there. So, that begs the question, can you brief those who are watching a little bit about how you all are perceiving the threat landscape at HSI? I mean, certainly, the threats that we're seeing today with the rise of social media and emerging technologies, may well be very different from what we were seeing even just 10 years ago. So, how have you seen threats evolve to either become more sophisticated or difficult to detect? And what sort of things are on your radar?
That's a great question. There is no more fluid environment, rapidly evolving environment than cyber, and in particular, cybercrime. As a law enforcement agency and as a government as a whole, which many of your audience, I believe, are members of government, it's very difficult for us to keep up and keep a pace with that threat and that evolving landscape. Cyber criminals of all stripes, whether they're child predators or whether they're financial fraud motivated, cyber hackers, whether they're state actors in some cases, whether they're involved in corporate espionage, they don't have to play by the rules that all of us are rightfully, constricted by. However, what we have been able to do at the DHS Cybercrime Center and under the leadership of HSI is really utilize our nimbleness as an investigative agency to really because we are so globally present, we do have a pretty good finger on the pulse of what's going on, because we're so well sourced when it comes to infiltration of criminal networks, for example, old school law enforcement techniques, development of sources of information and confidential informants, and the use of some of the latest and greatest technology that, quite frankly, we're leveraging for law enforcement purposes, utilizing those same technologies against criminals that they're using to either penetrate networks or conduct fraud schemes and erode cybersecurity. We have a pretty good sense of the current threats. Now, obviously, I'm sure we'll get into it, issues involving artificial intelligence. That's the hot topic these days, and how it is being leveraged across the criminal spectrum, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity issues. And we bucket cybercrime in a couple different ways: cyber facilitated crime and cyber enabled crime. But really what we're doing at the DHS Cybercrime Center is posturing ourselves for not only the now, but for the future tense on addressing these threats.
Next up, headlines from around the military. First up, a look at DARPA's Manta Ray drone. The full-size uncrewed underwater vehicle recently completed full-scale underwater testing. This testing phase was intended to assess the vehicle's hydrodynamic performance under real-world conditions. The sleek, modern drone is set to lead a new class of long-duration, long-range, payload-capable unmanned underwater vehicles for the U.S. military. And a new National Institutes of Health funded clinical trial for the first time linked service dogs with military veterans and saw lowered PTSD severity and lowered odds of its diagnosis and other mental health struggles. More than 150 military veterans were analyzed over 3 months and found that veterans with service dogs had 66% lower odds of a PTSD diagnosis. The vets with service dogs also experienced lower levels of anxiety and depression, and improvements in areas of emotional and social well-being. Mortuary affairs is not a job many want to think about, but it's one that's critically important for the military and the dignity of fallen service members. In a recent training, Marines led the way, with Personnel Retrieval and Processing Company Marines training the first group of soldiers to be instructors in training augmented non-mortuary affairs personnel in the field. During the training, soldiers were shown how to properly recover fatalities and transport them back to the command and eventually back home.
So we are running the Unit Recovery Team Instructor Certification course, training them how to instruct and certifying them to be the certified individuals who would train augmented non-mortuary affairs personnel. For real-world operations, fatality management is a joint effort, yes. But the reason they are out here is because they have the first certified instructors in DoD, and so they are certifying the Army's first instructors.
One big thing is just providing closure to a lot of people. Typically, we're just going out, retrieving fallen personnel so they can come home safely.
Wearing this uniform comes war, and with war, unfortunately, comes death, right? So we all learn how to do CLS. We all learn how to tourniquet an arm, because that's the unfortunate reality of the job that we signed up. It's something that we might have to do at some point within our career. And so it is unfair to ask service members to execute that operation at the time of combat without giving them proper training.
Finally, when these sailors joined the Navy, they probably didn't think they'd be fighting snakes. Well, fighting is an aggressive word. Handling is a little more accurate, but that's what sailors with the Marine Rotational Force in Darwin, Australia were doing when they took a snake handling course offered by local officials. Australia is home to a range of deadly snakes, so local experts teach visiting Americans how to handle them if they find them while stationed there, and how to treat a bite. Helpful info, but personally, I'd want a longer stick than that. When we come back, a dispatch from the annual Warrior Games. Have a look at the competition happening down in Disney World. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. The annual Warrior Games is an exhibition of grit, skill, and determination displayed by America's service members. Created for ill, wounded, and injured troops from all branches to have a top-notch sports event to compete in, the games feature a range of competitions, from wheelchair rugby to track and field. Our own Pat Hansen was on the ground at the games and sent back this report. Have a look.
I'm retired Staff Sergeant Colton Grim, and I'm on Team Air Force. Found this program, funny enough, is my wife was part of the program when we were already married, and she talked to her RCC about it, and they got in contact with my base's RCC, and they kind of got me connected to the program due to my injuries. So the injury that brought me into the program, I was involved in a car accident in 2020. After that, I went to go see a couple of doctors, physical therapists, and the recommendation was surgery. So in 2021, I had surgery on my neck. We had archery competition today, and I made it up to the top 4. So I didn't place, but that's okay because Air Force still took bronze medal. I lost to one of my good friends here, so Air Force took silver in the team competition, so we're still getting a medal regardless. I'm honestly happy she won because I got a medal last year for archery, and it's other people's turn. It's not just mine. I tend to make more mistakes when I think about it too much, so I kind of just get a rhythm and go with it. I've been told that I need to slow down, but for some reason, whenever I do that, I kind of mess up. We have to, adapt to our injury, and sometimes the stress and anxiety can come from well, what if I'm not good enough, or what if I have a down day to where my injury is affecting me more? But just pushing through it every day, I think it kind of helps that stress even just alleviate from my body. Having an event like this, dedicated service members, it means the world to me. It kind of makes me feel even though that I got out of the military, that we're not forgotten, and that we have different outlets to that comes with the job. I had a lot of anxiety and stress getting out of the military, but this program has kind of pointed me in the right direction. It gave me a lot of tools and a lot of resources for stuff that I can do on the outside after all this is over. The camaraderie that I have here, it's forever. I don't think had any friendships like this even in the military, and being on a team with these people, we can connect at a deeper level, and it's just, the friendship's gonna last forever. I'm gonna talk to all the people who are still in this program probably for years, and if not forever.
Next, in more of our interviews from the annual LandPAC conference in Hawaii, Defense News land warfare reporter Jen Judson caught up with the Army Air and Missile Defense Commander in the Pacific to talk about what's happening in his area of operations. Here's some of their conversation.
Can you talk a little bit about how is the command contributing to thinking around how to expand missile defense capabilities in the Pacific and forward project capability? I know earlier today you were talking about composite battalions taking shape west of the IDL. What are those going to look like, and how else are you expanding missile defense?
Yeah, so I think number one, the command is heavily involved in all things Guam. Right.
Yes.
There's a reason I've been down there 5 times this year already.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's going to be the Army's first kind of experiment with composite organization, where we'll have THAAD, Patriot, IFPC, all enabled by IBCS, right? With joint capability provided by MDA. The Air Force is going to have capability. The Marines coming back down to Guam will probably have capability that we can tie into this architecture. Wow. But it's almost like the Marine Corps MAGTF, where you kind of task organize.
Okay.
And as we talk about small islands in the Pacific, the whole full meal deal from Guam may not be the solution.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? But being able to take pieces and parts.
Permanent.
Right.
Yeah.
And so 2 things along with that. IBCS is going to enable us to break down those old stovepipes. If you would have told me years ago that we were going to be able to shoot a Patriot missile using a Sentinel radar, or using an F-35 or another joint sensor, right, I would have shook my head. But we're doing that now in experimentation. And so the opportunities that exist now with each of the multi-domain task forces that are assigned to the Pacific having an IFPC battalion, the Corps that's assigned to the Pacific, having an IFPIC battalion is going to open up a whole bunch of opportunities.
Yes.
On the joint side, to enable those opportunities to be successful and effective, we have to relook the way we're doing C2. We need decentralized command and control, frankly, control, to enable us with the authorities at the local level so that we're making decisions for the defense of Guam from Guam, so that we're making decisions about the defense of Japan from Japan instead of coming across the international date line.
When we come back, our personal finance expert returns with advice on how to avoid student loan scams. Don't go away. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, personal finance expert Jeanette Mack talks you through the ins and outs of how to avoid student loan scams. Check it out.
We all know fraudsters are on the prowl all the time, online, on the phone, in emails, everywhere. And now they've expanded their attentions to include a new group of consumers, student loan borrowers. With the many changes to student loans and repayment methods, borrowers may be more susceptible to scams now than ever before. If you're one of the millions of student borrowers, start paying more attention to texts and emails from lenders or any unknown sender. Never click links unless you're certain it's safe and you know who it's from. Whether the offer is over the phone or online, the same old adage applies. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. But for added safety, double-check the U.S. Department of Education's official website, studentaid.gov, for the most up-to-date and accurate information on federal loans. And talk to your lender directly before doing anything with your loan. Whether you're a student or the parent of a borrower, staying educated on student loan scams keeps you one step ahead of fraudsters and protects your finances and your peace of mind.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, peer down those iron sights and check out militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more headlines. And to become the most up-to-date operator in the Little Bird, sign up for our Early Bird Brief newsletter, compiled each morning to bring you the most recent headlines. Lastly, if social media is where you find open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And until the government shuts it down, we're on TikTok, so go find us there as well. When we come back, a veteran who died alone in a nursing home is honored for his service at his burial. Don't miss that story when we return. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. The Techet Cyber event at the Baltimore Convention Center this year was focused on a forward-looking theme: how to outpace emerging threats in the virtual space. Federal Times reporter Molly Weisner was on the scene to capture the highlights and brings us this story. Check it out.
I'm Molly Weisner with Federal Times, and today I'm talking to you from the Baltimore Convention Center, where this week the 2024 Techet Cyber Conference is kicking off, presented by the Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association International. Now, already there is a lot that has been discussed, from the latest in cybersecurity trends, artificial intelligence, zero trust, and the importance of securing the defense industrial base. Leaders from the U.S. government, the military, and certainly industry have all converged here to talk about how they can help move a lot of these aggressive, ambitious cybersecurity goals forward in order to ensure national security. It is certainly no surprise that both the services and the federal government are struggling to recruit cyber professionals, especially because the private sector can often pay more and offer competitive benefits. The way, though, that the military and the civilian government are looking at this issue is slightly different. For one, the services have said that they've actually had some luck so far in recruiting, and a lot of that has to do with mission. There's nothing else like the military and the private sector, and that really speaks to people. Now, the second big theme was securing the defense industrial base. Now, this is not a new idea, but it is something that was talked about in nearly every panel, especially by the military services. Now, certainly, large players in the defense industrial base may know what cybersecurity compliance means for them, but the government has also been trying to diversify the defense industrial base and bring on small businesses. And part of the concern there is, how do you ensure that they too are adhering to cybersecurity compliance without those processes and requirements becoming too much of an overhead that they are prohibitive. And so that is a very delicate balance that the DoD is trying to strike right now. And they told industry that they are open to hearing feedback from them on how to do that and how to make those processes better. The other trend that we're noticing is that service members, soldiers, warfighters are being able to bring their own devices. And so there's a push to ask industry, how do we make those secure? Obviously, work from home environment makes it so that people can access privileged systems from other places besides the office. And certainly too, the nature of war is such that people need to be everywhere. And so they need to access information from wherever they are. That was also something that the Army has played with, and it has done pilot projects on bring your own devices, and the Air Force and Space Force are looking into that as well. For more coverage on this and all the highlights, make sure to keep following us along online. I'm Molly Weisner with Federal Times.
After Marine veteran Jerry Brooks died in a nursing home in Maine recently, the funeral home handling his burial made a realization. There was no one to attend his funeral. So they put out the word, asking for volunteers to serve as pallbearers or simply attend the burial service. That call was heard and answered. Members of the local community and veterans groups showed up in force to honor the 86-year-old Marine, of whom little was known. Brooks was given full military honors, and hundreds of strangers showed up to give him a final send-off.
We were initially contacted by the funeral home and asked if we'd do a veteran service, if we'd lead a veteran service, and we of course said yes. And from there, it just grew into what you saw today. Hundreds of people, literally hundreds of people. We were told that Mr. Brooks had been abandoned, and we stepped in to fill the role of family because, again, we're all servicemen, all the servicemen and women, and we are all family. We all stick together. So it's a huge honor for us to be able to facilitate these services.
It was such a who in the soup kitchen every day. The quintessential 80-year-old dad jokes every day. He called me the big boss lady and was always liked his coffee nice and tan, and was just great to have around. Was really part of the soup kitchen family, and he's very much missed.
Everybody deserves to have dignity with death and at the final end, and deserves not to be alone, whether they're a service member or not. Any man or woman that serves in the Marine Corps is in brotherhood and sisterhood. So we had family all around us. So it was important this was a family member we were burying today.
Semper Fi, Jerry. And that's all we have time for in this episode. Join us next time for more from Defense News Weekly.